The massive alien ship appeared suddenly in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning. It hung silently above the planet, twice the size of the largest human space station. Within hours, smaller vessels detached from its hull and descended toward the United Nations headquarters in New York. Commander John Baker stood at attention as the delegation arrived. His blue uniform was perfectly pressed, his expression calm despite the historic gravity of the moment. As head of the United Earth Defense Forces Diplomatic Division, he had trained for first contact scenarios, but no simulation could match the reality before him. The aliens called themselves the Valkorian Confederation. There were 3 distinct species among them: the tall, slender Valk with their blue-tinted skin, the stocky reptilian Koros, and the floating jellyfish-like Medusan. Their translator devices converted their strange sounds into perfect English. "We welcome you to Earth," said Secretary General Rodriguez, extending her hands in greeting. Lead alien Ambassador Krex, a 7-foot Valk with elaborate silver markings on his face, merely nodded. "We have observed your world for some time. Your species shows potential." The way he said potential made John's neck hairs stand up. It sounded like how someone might describe a moderately interesting pet. Lieutenant Susan Miller stood beside John. She had been added to the diplomatic team for her exceptional analytical skills. While everyone else focused on the aliens' words, Susan studied their body language, the subtle movements of their eyes, the positioning of their guards. "Something's off," she whispered to John when they had a moment alone during the reception. "The smaller Koros keep touching their weapons whenever our military personnel speak, and the Medusans have positioned themselves near all major exits." John had noticed it too. "Keep watching, but remember, we're here to establish peaceful relations." The talks continued for 3 days. The Valkorians shared impressive technology, medical advancements, faster-than-light communication devices, and energy production methods far beyond Earth's capabilities. But each gift came with strings attached. "These are merely samples," Ambassador Krex explained during a private meeting with Earth's Security Council. "Full integration into the Confederation would provide much more. We offer protection, guidance, and advancement." "Protection from what exactly?" John asked. Krex's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "The galaxy is not always kind to emerging worlds. Without proper supervision, many civilizations destroy themselves or become targets for less benevolent powers." That evening, John and Susan reviewed recordings of the meetings in a secure room beneath the UN building. "They're talking to us like we're children," Susan said, replaying a section where a Medusan delegate patronizingly explained space travel concepts to a human physicist who had actually pioneered similar theories. "And did you notice how they avoid answering questions about their military?" John nodded, troubled. "They've shown us no weapons, yet their ships have what are clearly weapon ports. They call them defensive measures, but won't demonstrate or explain them." The next morning, Susan arrived at John's office looking worried. She carried a small device, one of the communication tools the Valkorians had gifted to the diplomatic team. "I couldn't sleep, so I took this apart," she said, placing the disassembled communicator on his desk. "There's a secondary transmission system built in. It's been sending data constantly, mapping our facilities, recording our conversations, even when we thought it was off." John's face darkened. "We need to inform the Secretary General." Before they could leave, John's secure phone rang. It was from General Martinez at the Pacific Monitoring Station. "Commander, you need to see this. We intercepted a transmission from the Valkorian mothership to somewhere beyond our solar system. Our computers just finished translating it." The "it" message appeared on John's screen. "Initial assessment complete. Earth, resource-rich, technologically undeveloped, militarily negligible. Recommend immediate integration into the resource territories. Minimal resistance expected. Valkorian supremacy assured." John's hands tightened into fists. "They're not here for peaceful contact. They're preparing to take over." When confronted with the evidence, Secretary General Rodriguez authorized a covert operation. That night, John and Susan led a small team to place hidden monitoring devices near the Valkorian delegation's quarters. What they discovered confirmed their fears. The aliens spoke openly among themselves about Earth's primitive defenses and valuable water reserves. They laughed about how easily humans were impressed by technology that was considered outdated in their own society. These humans will make excellent workers, one Koro said. Their physical strength is surprising for such an undeveloped species. Ambassador Krex's voice was cold and calculating. The protection agreement will be presented tomorrow. Once signed, their sovereignty is legally forfeit according to Confederation law. And if they refuse? Asked another voice. They won't once we demonstrate our power. One small display should be sufficient. Perhaps one of their uninhabited islands. Their weapons cannot harm our ships. They have no choice but to submit. When the evidence was presented to world leaders, panic spread quickly. Many argued for immediate surrender to avoid destruction. Others wanted to fight, even against impossible odds. The next morning, Ambassador Krex presented the protection agreement to the United Nations General Assembly. The document was hundreds of pages of complex legal terms, but its essence was simple. Earth would become a protected territory of the Valkorian Confederation, subject to their laws and resource management. This is not a request for surrender, John said firmly when he addressed the assembly after Krex. This is a demand for subjugation. Krex's face showed annoyance at the human's directness. Commander Baker misunderstands. We offer advancement and protection. Your world faces many dangers you cannot comprehend. Like yourselves? Susan asked loudly from her seat. The room fell silent. Krex's expression hardened. We have been patient with your primitive customs, but there are limits. You have 72 hours to accept our generous offer, or we will be forced to demonstrate why protection is in your best interest. As the aliens left the chamber, John received an encrypted message on his secure device. It contained just 5 words that made his heart race. Operation Thunderbolt is now active. He looked at Susan, whose device showed the same message. What's Operation Thunderbolt? She whispered. John's face was grim. I don't know, but I think we're about to find out. In secret facilities around the world, lights began turning on in rooms that had been dark for decades. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, massive doors slowly opened on the ocean floor. And on the dark side of the moon, hidden installations powered. Up for the first time since their completion, Earth was not as defenseless as the Valkorians believed. Captain Alan Wright was having breakfast when the call came. He stared at the red flashing light on his secure phone, a device that had never activated in his 15 years of service. He touched the screen, and a simple message appeared. Thunderbolt. Protocol. Report to anchor point immediately. 30 minutes later, he was in a helicopter flying over the Pacific Ocean. The pilot said nothing beyond checking his credentials. They flew for hours until they reached what looked like an ordinary oil drilling platform. As they landed, the platform's center began to open, revealing a massive elevator. Alan stepped onto the elevator alone. It descended for what felt like miles, the light dimming as they went deeper. When the doors finally opened, he found himself in an enormous underground facility carved into the ocean floor. Men and women in uniforms he had never seen before hurried around massive computer terminals and equipment. Captain Wright, a voice called. A woman with short gray hair approached him. I'm Dr. Olivia Grant. Welcome to Anchor Point. What is this place? Alan asked, staring at the underground base in amazement. The truth about Earth's defense system, she replied, leading him down a long corridor. What do you know about the Valkorian ultimatum? Only what's on the news. Aliens want us to surrender. We have less than 72 hours to decide. Dr. Grant nodded. What you don't know is that this isn't humanity's first contact with aliens. She led him into a room where the walls were covered with images and schematics. At the center was a photo of what looked like a crashed spaceship. 50 years ago, a scout ship crashed in the Arctic, she explained. Before anyone could announce it to the world, a coalition of nations secured the site. They found technology beyond anything we had imagined and realized something important. We weren't ready to meet whoever was out there. Alan stared at the images. Why wasn't this made public? Fear of panic, fear of division, but mostly strategic advantage. The coalition decided to keep the discovery secret while they studied the technology. They created Project Thunderbolt, a hidden defense system for when, not if, we encountered hostile aliens. They continued walking until they reached a massive window overlooking an underwater hangar. Alan's jaw dropped at what he saw. Suspended in the water was an enormous warship unlike anything on Earth. It was at least half a mile long, with a dark hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its shape reminded Alan of ancient sailing ships combined with sleek modern design, with gigantic engines at the back and what were clearly weapon systems along its sides. "This is a dreadnought," Dr. Grant said quietly. "The USS Defiant. There are 12 others like it hidden around the world. Some underwater, some concealed in underground mountain bases, 3 on the far side of the moon. How did we build these, without anyone knowing? Black budget projects, secret facilities, personnel sworn to absolute secrecy. We've been preparing for 50 years, Captain. And now you're being given command of the Defiant." Alan couldn't believe what he was hearing. "But I'm not trained for this. I command a nuclear submarine, not a space battleship. You were chosen years ago, along with every other crew member. Your entire naval career has been preparation for this. The simulations, the special training exercises, they were all designed to prepare you for commanding a dreadnought." A young officer approached them with a tablet. "Dr. Grant, the Valkorians are moving their fleet into position around Earth. They're earlier than expected." Dr. Grant's expression darkened. "They're not waiting for their deadline. Typical. Captain, we need to accelerate the timeline. Follow me." They entered a command center where dozens of people worked at stations. A large screen showed the Valkorian ships taking positions around Earth. "The Valkorians think we're defenseless," Dr. Grant explained. "They don't know about the dreadnoughts or the defense grid." "Defense grid?" Alan asked. A man at one of the consoles turned around. Thousands of weapons platforms disguised as satellites or hidden on the moon and in asteroid belts. "I'm Chief Communications Officer Kevin Hayes. I'll be on your crew." Another officer stood up. "Patricia Benson, Technical Officer. I control the defense grid activation sequences." Dr. Grant pulled up schematics of the Defiant on a screen. "The dreadnoughts combine alien technology with human innovation. Their hulls are made of materials we reverse-engineered that can withstand tremendous damage. The weapon systems are beyond anything publicly known." "Why have we kept this secret for so long?" Alan asked. "Strategic advantage," said a new voice. Alan turned to see Commander John Baker entering the room with a woman he didn't recognize. "If the galaxy knew what we had, we'd lose the element of surprise." "I'm Commander Baker. This is Lieutenant Miller. We've been dealing with the Valkorians directly." Lieutenant Susan Miller nodded grimly. "They're arrogant. They think we're primitive. That's our advantage." A red alert began flashing on all screens. Patricia Benson checked her console. "The Valkorians are powering weapons. They're targeting Henderson Island in the South Pacific." They watched in horror as a beam of light shot from the Valkorian mothership. On the screen, the small uninhabited island exploded, leaving nothing but boiling water. "A demonstration of power," John said bitterly. "They're not waiting for our answer." The main screen switched to a view of a global broadcast. Ambassador Krex's face filled the screen. "People of Earth," he said, his voice cold. "You have seen a small demonstration of our capabilities. This was merely one ship, at minimal power. We have hundreds more in orbit. Your military is powerless against us. Accept our protection agreement, or the next demonstration will not be on an uninhabited island." President Laura Kelly's face appeared on another screen. She looked calm despite the crisis. "Captain Wright, is the Defiant ready?" "No, Madam President," Dr. Grant answered. "We need at least 12 hours to—" "We don't have 12 hours, the President interrupted. "The Joint Chiefs are urging surrender. Half the world's leaders are ready to give in after seeing that demonstration. I need options." Alan looked at the Defiant through the window, then at the crew around him, and finally at the Valkorian ships on the screen. Something inside him shifted. This was why he had been trained his entire career. "Madam President," he said firmly, "give us 6 hours. We can have the Defiant and 3 other dreadnoughts ready. The rest can follow." You have 4 hours, Captain, the President replied. I'm authorizing Operation Thunderbolt effective immediately. As the screen went dark, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Dr. Grant turned to Alan. Well, Captain, it seems you have a ship to command. Alan nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Let's show these Valkorians what humanity can really do. Throughout the world, in deep ocean trenches and hidden mountain bases, lights began powering up on massive ships that humanity had kept secret for decades. Earth was about to reveal its true strength. The Valkorian ships spread across Earth's orbit like predators circling wounded prey. Ambassador Krex stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet with cold satisfaction. The humans were surely panicking now. They're primitive. Governments arguing over surrender terms. The destruction of Henderson Island had been a perfect demonstration, visible enough to terrify, but without causing mass casualties that might inspire desperate resistance. Any response from their leaders? Krex asked his communications officer. Nothing official yet, Ambassador. Their global communications show widespread fear. Many are calling for immediate surrender. Krex nodded. As expected. Their deadline has 5 more hours, but I doubt they'll need it. Prepare to receive their delegation. Far below, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Captain Alan Wright strapped himself into the command chair of the USS Defiant. Around him, his hastily assembled crew worked at unfamiliar stations, running through activation sequences they had practiced only in simulations. Main power systems online, reported Patricia Benson from her technical station. The lights throughout the massive ship brightened as ancient engines hummed to life. Weapons grid initializing, called another officer. All defensive systems. Operational. Kevin Hayes adjusted his communications headset. Captain, I'm receiving status updates from the other Dreadnoughts. The Atlantic Defender and Pacific Sentinel are ready. The Southern Guardian needs 10 more minutes. Alan nodded, feeling the weight of command. And what about our lunar forces? The Moon Shadow, Starhammer, and Nova Fist are powered up and awaiting orders. Alan took a deep breath. Send to all Dreadnought captains. Prepare for surface breach on my mark. Dr. Grant stood beside him, checking final readings on a tablet. Captain, the Valkorians have no idea what's about to hit them. Their scans can't penetrate our stealth systems. As far as they know, Earth has no significant space combat capability. That's about to change, Alan said grimly. Status of the defense grid? Patricia checked her console. Ready for activation. The satellites and lunar platforms are still in stealth mode. We can bring them online as soon as we surface. A voice came through on the command channel. It was President Kelly. Captain Wright, the Security Council has made its decision. We will not surrender to the Valkorians. Operation Thunderbolt is authorized. You may launch when ready. Alan straightened in his chair. Acknowledged, Madam President. All hands prepare for surface breach. Communications linked to all Dreadnoughts. On my count, 3, 2, 1. Execute. Deep beneath oceans around the world, massive doors opened on the sea floor. Billions of gallons of water displaced as enormous shapes rose toward the surface. On the far side of the moon, hidden hangar doors slid open, revealing 3 more massive warships. On the Valkorian flagship, alarms suddenly blared. A junior officer ran to Krex's side. Ambassador, we're detecting massive energy readings from Earth's oceans and from the dark side of their moon. Impossible, Krex snapped. Their technology can't. His words cut off as the bridge view screen showed something emerging from Earth's Pacific Ocean. Water cascaded off the massive dark hull of the Defiant as it rose like a metal island from the depths. All around the planet, other dreadnoughts surfaced, each nearly half a mile long, their sleek designs unlike anything the Valkorians had seen from Earth before. What is this? Krex whispered in shock. Scan those vessels immediately. Inside the Defiance bridge, Alan felt the ship stabilize as it fully emerged from the ocean. Status report. All systems nominal, Patricia replied. The Valkorians are scanning us with everything they've got. Let them look, Alan said. Lieutenant Miller, what's their reaction? Susan Miller had been brought aboard as a tactical advisor. Due to her experience with the aliens, she smiled grimly at her console. "Confusion, sir. Their communication channels are chaos. They thought we were defenseless." Kevin Hayes looked up from his station. "Captain, we're being hailed by the Valkorian flagship. On screen," Alan ordered. Ambassador Krex's face appeared, his usual calm replaced by visible agitation. "What deception is this? Your primitive world has no such technology." Alan stood from his chair. "Ambassador Krex, this is Captain Alan Wright. Of the Earth Dreadnought Defiant. Your assessment of our world was incomplete. These vessels cannot possibly be of Earth origin," Krex insisted. "You've stolen this technology." "We developed it ourselves," Alan replied simply, with a little inspiration. Krex's eyes narrowed. "The Raktar scout ship that disappeared 50 of your years ago. You found it." "As I said, inspiration." Alan's voice hardened. "You gave Earth an ultimatum. Now we give you one. Leave our solar system immediately or face the consequences." Krex's face darkened with rage. "You dare threaten the Valkorian Confederation? Our fleet outnumbers your ships 5-1. Numbers aren't everything, Ambassador." Alan nodded to Patricia. "Activate the defense grid." Around the Earth and Moon, thousands of previously invisible weapons platforms suddenly powered up. What the Valkorians had thought were simple communications, satellites revealed hidden weapon systems. Concealed installations on the Moon's surface opened to display massive energy cannons. "Another deception," Krex hissed. "How long have you been preparing for this?" "Long enough," Alan replied. "Your ships have 1 hour to withdraw beyond the orbit of Mars. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war." Krex cut the transmission. On the Defiance bridge, Susan looked concerned. "They won't retreat, Captain. Not without a fight. The Valkorians never back down. It would shame them before the other galactic powers." "I know," Alan said quietly. "But I had to give them the chance." Kevin's console beeped urgently. "Captain, the Valkorians are calling for reinforcements. 6 more battle cruisers just entered the outer solar system through some kind of faster-than-light portal." They were waiting nearby, Susan realized. They always planned to bring in more ships after we surrendered. Alan's jaw tightened. "All dreadnoughts, battle stations, defense grid to full power. We're about to find out what these ships can really do." Dr. Grant moved to his side. "The dreadnoughts were built for this moment, Captain. 50 years of preparation." Alan nodded grimly. "Let's hope it was enough." The Valkorian ships began to move, forming attack formations around Earth. On his flagship, Ambassador Krex gave the order, "Target their largest vessel, the one that surfaced from the Pacific. Show these deceptive humans the true power of the Confederation." Brilliant energy beams lanced from 3 Valkorian cruisers converging on the Defiant. The bridge crew braced for impact, but instead of destruction, the energy beams seemed to distort and flow around the Dreadnought's hull, dissipating harmlessly. "Shield technology holding," Patricia reported calmly. "No damage." Alan allowed himself a small smile. "Mr. Hayes, please inform the lunar dreadnoughts they are cleared to engage, and signal all Earth defense platforms to target Valkorian engines and weapon systems." Across Earth's orbit, thousands of weapons suddenly fired in perfect coordination. The battle for Earth had begun. Space around Earth lit up with energy beams and explosions as the battle began. The Defiant shook as Valkorian weapons fire struck its shields. Captain Alan Wright gripped his command chair, watching the tactical display as more enemy ships entered. The fight. "Shields holding at 87%, Patricia reported. "Their weapons are powerful, but our defense systems are absorbing most of the impact." Alan studied the enemy formations. "They're trying to surround us. Signal all dreadnoughts to maintain defensive positions around Earth. We can't let any of their ships get through to the surface." Commander John Baker had joined the Defiant as a tactical advisor. He pointed to a cluster of Valkorian ships. "Their command structure is hierarchical. If we can disrupt their flagship, it will throw their formations into chaos." "Good thinking," Alan agreed. "But their flagship is in the center of their fleet, heavily protected." Susan Miller studied the enemy ships on her screen. During our diplomatic meetings, I noticed the Valkorians always protect their right flank. It's a cultural thing. Their vital organs are on that side. Their ships might follow the same design philosophy. Worth testing, Alan said. Target weapons on the right side of their vessels. Communications, signal the Moon Shadow and Star Hammer to move to these coordinates. We'll create a gap in our line and let the Valkorians think they've found a weakness. Orbit above Earth, the lunar dreadnoughts moved into position, creating what appeared to be a vulnerable section in Earth's defenses. Ambassador Krex noticed immediately. There, he ordered. Push through that gap with our fastest ships. If we can get past their orbital defenses, we can target their population centers. They'll surrender rather than watch their cities burn. 5 Valkorian battlecruisers broke formation, accelerating toward the perceived weakness. As they approached, Alan gave the order. Spring the trap. Suddenly, hundreds of previously dormant defense satellites activated directly in the path of the Valkorian ships. Before they could change course, the satellites fired synchronized energy pulses at the right sides of the enemy vessels. 3 cruisers immediately lost power and began drifting. The other 2 spun wildly, their engines damaged. It worked, Susan exclaimed. Their shield systems are weaker on the right side, just as we suspected. Alan didn't waste the advantage. All dreadnoughts target right flanks of enemy vessels. Defense grid, concentrate fire on their weapon systems. The battle turned instantly. Earth's defense platforms and dreadnoughts adjusted their targeting, focusing on the now known weakness. Valkorian ships began losing power across their formation. Aboard, his flagship Krex slammed his fist on a console. How did they know? Reinforce shields on our right sides. Call in the second wave of reinforcements. His communications officer looked up in alarm. We can't, Ambassador. The humans have somehow disrupted our long-range signals. We can't reach our reinforcements. Kevin Hayes smiled at his station on the Defiant. Signal jamming successful, Captain. Their calls for help aren't getting through. Excellent, Alan replied. Now for Phase 2. Lieutenant Ross, is your team ready? Lieutenant Daniel Ross stood at the back of the bridge in a special armored suit. Ready, Captain. My boarding team is prepared for insertion. This was the most dangerous part of their plan. While the main battle distracted the Valkorians, a small team would infiltrate their flagship to disable their central command systems. It was risky, but potentially decisive. You have 30 minutes, Alan told. Ross, that's how long we can keep their sensors too busy to detect your approach vessel. Ross nodded grimly. That's all we'll need, sir. As Ross and his small team departed in a stealth shuttle, the space battle intensified. 3 Earth dreadnoughts took heavy damage as the Valkorians adjusted their tactics, reinforcing their right flanks. The Atlantic Defender's engines were hit, sending it drifting toward Earth's atmosphere. The Defender is in trouble, Kevin reported. Their captain reports critical damage to propulsion systems. Direct the Pacific Sentinel to cover them, Alan ordered. And intensify defense grid fire to draw attention away from Ross's approach. The Valkorians fought back fiercely. A concentrated attack from 5 of their ships overwhelmed a section of Earth's defense grid, destroying dozens of satellites. 2 more Earth dreadnoughts reported critical damage. Our lines are thinning, John warned. If they push now, some of their ships could break through to Earth. Alan's expression was grim. Deploy our reserve weaponry. Authorize lunar base cannons to fire. On the surface of the moon, massive energy cannons that had remained dormant now swiveled toward the battle. They fired enormous beams that cut through space, slicing into 2 Valkorian heavy cruisers and destroying them instantly. What was that? Krex demanded as his ship shook from the nearby explosions. Energy weapons from their moon, his tactical officer replied, voice shaking. Power levels beyond anything we've seen from them. Our shields cannot withstand direct hits. Meanwhile, Ross's stealth shuttle approached the Valkorian flagship, undetected in the chaos of battle. His team of 6 attached their vessel to the hull near what their intelligence suggested was a maintenance airlock. We're in position, Ross reported quietly through his secure communicator. Beginning entry procedure. Using tools reverse-engineered from alien technology, they bypassed the airlock security and slipped aboard the massive Valkorian vessel. Following memorized schematics based on Susan's observations during diplomatic visits, they moved toward the ship's command center. "Remember," Ross told his team, "we need to reach their central network node. Plant the virus, then get out. We have 20 minutes before our window closes." On the Defiant, Alan watched the battle with growing concern. Despite their initial success, the Valkorians still outnumbered them. 2 Earth dreadnoughts were completely disabled, and a third was in critical condition. The defense grid had lost almost 30% of its platforms. "We can't keep this up much longer," Patricia warned, her console flashing with damage reports. "We just need to hold until Ross completes his mission," Alan replied. Aboard the Valkorian flagship, Ross and his team fought through increasingly heavy resistance. 2 team members were injured as they neared the central command node, but they pushed forward. Finally, they reached a massive chamber filled with glowing equipment. "This is it," said Ross, attaching a small device to what appeared to be the main control interface. The device lit up as it began uploading the virus Dr. Grant had designed specifically to disrupt Valkorian command systems. "Virus uploading," Ross reported to the Defiant. 60 seconds to completion." On his bridge, Ambassador Krex suddenly noticed his control systems flickering. "What's happening?" "Intrusion in our central network," an officer shouted. "Unknown. Code spreading through our systems. Find it and stop it," Krex ordered, but it was too late. Throughout the Valkorian fleet, ships suddenly lost coordination. Their tactical networks went down. Weapon systems reset or shut down entirely. The perfect formation that had given them advantage dissolved into confusion. "Now," Alan ordered. "All dreadnoughts focus fire on their command ships. Defense grid, target engines, and weapons on all vessels." Earth's forces launched a coordinated assault unlike anything the Valkorians had encountered. Without their command network, the alien ships couldn't coordinate their defenses. One by one, their vessels lost power or retreated from the fight. On the Defiant's bridge, Kevin's console lit up. "Captain, Ross's team is clear. They're heading back in their shuttle." Alan allowed himself a small smile. "Tell them well done. Now let's finish this." The Defiant surged forward, leading Earth's remaining dreadnoughts in a final push against the disorganized Valkorian fleet. Ambassador Krex watched in disbelief as his mighty armada fell apart around him. "Impossible," he whispered. "These humans, they were supposed to be primitive." His flagship shuddered as the Defiant's main weapon struck directly at its power core. Klaxons wailed as systems failed across the ship. "Ambassador," his first officer said quietly, "we must withdraw." Krex stared at the view screen showing Earth's forces closing in. He had underestimated these humans completely. "Send the signal," he ordered bitterly. "All ships, retreat." The Valkorian ships retreated in disarray, limping away from Earth orbit with damaged engines and failing systems. Captain Alan Wright watched from the bridge of the Defiant as the enemy fleet gathered at the edge of the solar system. After 3 days of tense waiting, a single Valkorian shuttle approached Earth under a flag of truce. "They're requesting permission to land at the United Nations headquarters," Kevin Hayes reported. "Ambassador Krex wishes to discuss terms." Alan nodded. "Alert President Kelly and Commander Baker. I'll take a transport to New York to join the delegation." The main United Nations chamber was filled with world leaders and military officials when Alan arrived. Commander John Baker and Lieutenant Susan Miller stood with the Earth diplomatic team. Across from them, Ambassador Krex looked diminished somehow, his usual arrogance replaced by a careful neutrality. "The Valkorian Confederation acknowledges Earth's military capabilities," Krex began formally. "We propose an immediate cessation of hostilities and recognition of Earth's sovereign status." President Kelly stepped forward. "We accept your ceasefire, Ambassador, but there are conditions. The Valkorian Confederation will never again threaten Earth or attempt to claim our resources. You will acknowledge our independence not as a gift but as our right." Krex nodded stiffly. "Agreed." "Additionally," the president continued, You will share with us all information about other worlds you have approached for protection in the manner you approached Earth. This request clearly made Krex uncomfortable. That is internal Confederation business. John Baker stepped forward. Our technicians recovered extensive data from your ship's communication systems during the battle. We already know about at least 7 other worlds you've subjugated. We can find the rest on our own if necessary. Krex's expression darkened, but he nodded again. Very well. As the formal negotiations continued, Alan found himself standing with Susan and Dr. Grant in a side chamber. How did they not know about our dreadnoughts? Alan asked. They must have been observing Earth for years. Dr. Grant smiled. The stealth technology we developed makes the dreadnoughts virtually invisible to sensors when powered down. The underwater and lunar bases are similarly shielded. They saw what they expected to see, a planet with primitive space capabilities. Susan added, and the Valkorians are arrogant. They assumed that because our public space program used simple rockets and small stations, that was the limit of our technology. Their arrogance was their downfall, Alan agreed. The door opened and Lieutenant Ross entered. His arm was in a sling, from injuries sustained during the mission aboard the Valkorian flagship. Captain, you should see this. Our technicians just decoded more of the Valkorian data. They gathered around a screen as Ross pulled up a star map. These are worlds the Valkorians have conquered or attempted to conquer. The blue ones submitted immediately. The red ones resisted and were overwhelmed. But these green ones... He pointed to 3 planets. These somehow drove the Valkorians away. Other worlds with hidden defenses like ours? Dr. Grant wondered. That's what we believe, Ross confirmed. And this is the really interesting part. We found communications between the Valkorians and these worlds. Some date back only a few months. 2 weeks later, Alan stood on the bridge of the Defiant as it hovered above Earth. The ship was fully repaired after the battle, its systems enhanced with new knowledge gained from studying the disabled Valkorian vessels. Captain, we're receiving the signal from President Kelly, Kevin announced. The transmission is ready. Alan nodded. On screen, the view screen activated, showing the president standing in the Oval Office. Captain Wright, is your crew prepared for this historic moment? We are, Madam President. Then proceed. Alan turned to his communications officer. Mr. Hayes, transmit on the frequencies provided by the data. Kevin activated a special communications array. Transmitting now, sir. The bridge crew waited in tense silence. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, the communications console lit up. Captain, we're receiving responses, Kevin exclaimed. 3 distinct signals matching the pattern we sent. Alan smiled. Put them on screen. The view screen split into 3 sections. In each, a different alien face appeared. They looked nothing like the Valkorians or each other. One had green skin with leaf-like features, another resembled something between an octopus and a bird, and the third was a crystalline being that glowed from within. Greetings from Earth, Alan said simply. We recently had a disagreement with the Valkorian Confederation. We believe you may have had similar experiences. The leaf-like alien spoke first, its words translated by the communication system. The people of Dendron welcome our Earth siblings to the community of resistance. The Valkorians came to our world 50 cycles ago, demanding our submission. They too were surprised when our hidden fleets emerged. The octopus bird alien made a series of clicks and whistles that translated as, Velocia stands with Earth. We have monitored your battle through long-range sensors. Your strategy was most impressive. The crystal being's voice came through as harmonious tones. The crystal collective acknowledges Earth's victory. We have resisted Valkorian expansion for many revolutions. Perhaps together, we can ensure they threaten no more worlds. President Kelly joined the conversation. That is precisely what Earth proposes, an alliance of independent worlds standing together against any who would conquer or subjugate others. Over the next month, delegations from Earth visited each of these worlds. Using the faster-than-light technology they had reverse-engineered from the Valkorian ships. they discovered that each civilization had its own story of preparation and resistance. The people of Dendron had hidden their technology in the massive forest canopies that covered their world. The Velossians had disguised their advanced vessels as enormous sea creatures. The Crystal Collective had buried entire cities beneath their world's crystalline surface. On the day the alliance was formally established, Captain Alan Wright stood with Commander Baker, Lieutenant Miller, Dr. Grant, and Lieutenant Ross on the observation deck of the Defiant. Below them, Earth looked peaceful and blue. "Things will never be the same," Susan said quietly. "We're part of something much bigger now." John nodded. "But we're entering as equals, not subjects. That makes all the difference." "What happens next?" Ross asked. Alan looked out at the stars. "We continue exploring, we build stronger defenses, and we make sure no one underestimates Earth again." Dr. Grant smiled. "The Valkorians thought Earth was weak because we kept our strength hidden. That was our advantage. Now the galaxy knows what we're capable of." "Not everything," Alan said, with a slight smile. "The next generation of Dreadnoughts is already under construction. Some secrets are still worth keeping." As if in response, a notification appeared on a nearby screen. It showed a Valkorian ship approaching a distant planet, likely seeking new resources to claim. But something else appeared on the sensors. Ships rising from the planet's surface, their design unfamiliar, but their purpose clear. Another world that had been preparing in secret. Another world the Valkorians had underestimated. Alan watched, with satisfaction. It seems we're not the only ones who know how to surprise an overconfident enemy. The legacy of Earth's resistance was spreading across the stars. The age of subjugation was ending. The age of alliance had begun.